Okay, well, this is a short warning. Well, it's not really connected to Drupal yet, but it should also be interesting enough. So quickly, just to know who I'm at, I'm a co-founder of a company, NetGen, here in Zagreb. I have a lot, I counted around 16 years building of various kind of web solutions, mostly using Easy Publish, which is a very similar thing to Drupal now. Anyone heard about Easy Publish? Oh, okay. Now it's based on Symfony. It's full stack Symfony, and Drupal 8 is using Symfony components, so it's kind of getting closer by each year. And we are mostly working abroad, usually EU. I did my share of being a developer, site builder, architect, consultant, project manager, evangelist, speaker, event organizer, business developer, and this is just from top of my head. There's probably more. I'm also a CFO and CMO of the company and whatever. But the company, we have around 20 employees, focused on Easy from 2004, which is quite a lot. We are very recognized in the community, working on Symfony from 2013 as well, organizing. It started as an Easy Summer Camp in 2012. It's now 6th year, and it's called Web Summer Camp. We are basically sold out. Even the event is in end of August, and we have clients all over the place. So, how this topic got started? I suppose all of you are doing web projects in some way. I mean, it's a Drupal conference. I would presume that you are doing web projects. So what we kind of, or I suppose everybody is a bit frustrated sometimes with how building process of websites and web solution is slow, especially because of the lot of phases. You wait for the design, and then you do the CSS work, and then you incorporate this in the backend, etc., etc. It's kind of a serialized work. It's not agile. It's not. It's hard to do projects in phases in parallel. And of course, the biggest kind of gap is between design and development. Sometimes you just, as a developers, we get a design which is more or less finished, right? And then you need to implement this. And I don't know, this is a guy also involved in the Drupal community in some way, but I would quite agree with his statement that, projects usually fail if designers do things without developers and vice versa. So what we were thinking a lot about how to improve this process. And of course, you can improve each phase. Like as a front-end developer, you can have SAS and stuff like that, building CSS. As a backend developer, you will use a framework. As a UX designer, you will use prototyping tools better and better. And in each skill, you can improve yourself, of course. But how to improve the process overall. And there are other ways. I mean, for example, there are things like Webflow and Wix, which is mostly trying to solve this, but it's not on enterprise level. It's hard to extend. You have prototyping, wireframing tools exporting to HTML, CSS, which is now should be a common. But how to integrate backend into this? We never use it in such way. Responsiveness is very hard still with that. And you have, of course, specific CMS tools. I believe in Drupal you have things like Drupal panels and stuff like that. Try to solve this thing. So when we were thinking of how to solve it, we kind of we wanted to find what is the intersection of all these skills or all these phases. What is the common ground? And if you think about it, you know, what is the common ground for backend, front-end, UX design, and content? What could be the common ground? And well, we basically boiled it down to layouts and blocks. So the backend developer implements features that need to be placed somewhere on the interface layout, right? So when he implements it, it's somewhere. It's a block on a layout. The front-end developer applies design on HTML markup, which describes the layout. The editors place content in prepared blocks. UX designers define the interface with a set of layouts and blocks. So everybody works with layouts and blocks. All the people involved. So that's the kind of, for us, the common concepts are layout and blocks. And think about it. How do you start the project? You take paper and pencil, and then you draw layouts and blocks, right? Anything else? Maybe some hearts. So what are the main concepts that we kind of envisioned? It's a lot of text, and yeah. Maybe you have different names for the same concepts in Drupal world, but we call this like a layout. It's about rendering a page with all the blocks. There's a layout type, which kind of defines the template and the zones. I will show it later. And then zones, what is a zone? Zone is just a placeholder for blocks. And of course, there could be more zones in a layout. And blocks, when they are rendered, they are just basically rendered in a zone, each by each. And then we have a bit more complex thing, which is a shared layout. So the shared layout, it's not about rendering, it's just about placement of zones that are common across more layouts. And then we have this thing called zone linking, which is when I want to use a zone from a shared layout on a regular layout. So yeah, this is a lot of text. Let's try the next slide to explain it in a diagram. So I have a layout type, and that's basically just a twig template with 4 placeholders, nothing else. So you have a zone, top, bottom, left, right. And then from this layout type, you instantiate 3 layouts. Let's call this layout news, layout block post. And then what you do is place blocks inside the zones. But these zones here, these top zones, you don't want to place anything there because it's common. You have it already in this one, in the shared layout. And then you just link and say, this zone is actually rendering the blocks from this zone. And then the same thing with the right column here, but this one you put the block here. Does this make sense? Do you have kind of a similar kind of thinking in when you design the website, when you build a website? Makes sense. That's good. So we are not completely crazy. Okay, so a few more definitions of blocks, which would make sense, is that you have a block which is basically rendering a feature. It could have a block view, and block view is basically, again, just a twig template, nothing else. And we can have a block items in the block. Block items is more or less everything that you can get from the backend system, like content or product from an e-commerce system, whatever. And we call these collections. So collection has block items. And to fill the collection, we have a logically query. So the query is something that you define, which fetches the block items in a collection. And there could be various types of collections, but basically we have manual or dynamic. I will show it later. And then we have a special kind of block, which is a container for columns. Okay, then we have the most difficult part. We have layouts, how to connect layouts with pages, real pages. So when a request hits the system, we need to resolve a layout. We need to say which layout will be shown. We call this layout resolver. So we have this, and it decides which layout will be used. So it traverses the mappings of layouts and then picks the one that fits and shows it. It works on top of Symfony routing because this is a full stack Symfony solution. So it will not work out of the box with Drupal because Drupal is using its own. Maybe, or we will eventually integrate with Drupal. This is the Drupal connection. And then we have the layout mappings, which is just a configuration where we define which layout is applied to which target under which condition. Target is just an abstraction of URLs. So target could be a Symfony root, it could be a content tree, whatever which is resolved as a set of URLs. And conditions can be whatever you have at the request moment. So it could be a user group, it could be a time of the day, it could be a referral link, whatever. So this is a lot of too much to consume. So I think we'll show the demo, which makes more sense. So we actually did something with this. So let's try it out. It's not just on concepts anymore. So this is a demo page which we built. It's completely composed of our content for the demo purposes. And as you can see, it has a very typical elements of a small portal. So we have like menus and sliders, grids, right columns, blocks and other blocks, videos, footers, stuff like that. So let's see how it looks in the backend. I think I need to figure out the... Okay, let's log in. What you see here, this is just a improved easy publish administration that we did, so it's not that important. What you can see here is this is a home page. Let's say the backend view of the home page. So we have like sub items, we have the overview, etc. This is not important in this case, but what we have here is a shortcut saying what layouts are applied to this page. And we have this home layout, and we have a default one. This will be always resolved, but if there were no if there will be no layout like home, it will fall back into a default layout or something. So how this layout looks, and now we are coming to the main part of what we built, the layout solution, is that we have here a conceptual view of that page. And it's also responsive, so it has the same grid as the front side page, and that's the only common thing. They just share the same CSS grid, which in this case is, I think, Bootstrap 3 or 4, something like that. But nothing else is the same. We don't care about the CSS here. We don't care how it looks. We just want to see that this is the zone, the pre-header zone. It has this block and it has this block. And then we render it on the outside. And then we worry about the CSS on the front end. That's the biggest difference with many other tools, because we have a lot of these tools that are what you see is what you get, and they want to actually manage these blocks and layouts on the front side. We don't want to, because we don't want to limit the front side with anything from what we have. You can add, like, for example, the mentioned containers, certain block types, etc. This is all easy extendable if you know Symfony, of course. If you want to add, divide it have a 2-column view, divide it in typical sizes, then you can easily do it. This is all like typical thing. It only renders then the markup, which is for the grid, nothing else. And how this block will look like, it's defined in a design tab here. where we define basically a twig template which will render it, and then we have some sort of instructions to the front end how to use it, but nothing big. Regarding the collections that I told you before, we have a manual collection on this block defined, and then we have 3 items which I can change position. I can also go to the interface and try to search something else, like this one or this one, and then select it, and then I will have a 4th item. Actually, this one is hidden in the CMS, so better remove it. This block here, it has a dynamic collection, which means we define something which is not manually selected. We say, I want 4 items from news, published, sort type published, etc., etc. And then I will have 4 of these items here, but I can still add the manual one. So these 2 are manual, and these 4 are dynamic. That's why I have 6 in this block. And I can also do something like this, so even mix the manual ones and the dynamic ones. I could talk about this for hours, so just want to quickly go to the main part. Navigate layouts. So this is the part where we manage the layouts. The part that you already saw is about managing blocks inside one layout, and here we have managing of layouts in general. I mentioned shared layouts. So we have header, footer, right column, etc. So these are regular layouts, like right column, but they are managed here. Or right column with, I think, video. It looks like this. It's just kind of giving a context that it should be in the right zone, nothing else. So if I want to see, or if I want to use this, I'm going to the layout section. I have this kind of view, or I could have this kind of view, doesn't matter. And I see actually, I have this icon. It's maybe a bit small, I don't know, but you can see that. Okay, for the icon, you can see what kind of icon is this. This one has like there is no right column, and this one has. It's just a different twig template in the end and different icon. And I have a category, for example, bookworm. It has its layout for its number of mappings. I will explain this later. So if I go to this category bookworm, I see this here as grayed out, which means that I cannot put blocks into it. And why I cannot? Because it's linked to the shared layout zone. So we have this kind of a mode where we are actually linking those. And in this case, I can see the right column bookworm layout main zone is linked here. So, and I can update this link. So I can just say, let's select this right column with video, select, and then I will have this here. And if I publish it, it will be applied. Okay, so let's just go back and show the mappings. So this is the most kind of difficult part. We define here how those layouts are mapped. We have like priorities. These priorities are important because when the request comes, the resolver will go from the top to the bottom and find the first one that applies. So for the home page, it will hit here. For any kind of article, it will hit here. It says the whole subtree, but only news articles and blog post content type. But for the blog, it will actually hit here. So before this one. So for blogs, it will use this one. For the news, it will use this one. And you can see the details and manage the details here. So you can see that the target is blog, and the conditions are content type blog post. And let's say I want to add a new mapping, just quickly to show this. And then link layout, I can add the targets. These are the targets. So this would be something that for Drupal we would need to define Drupal targets, but it will be similar like Easy. So in Easy, we have an Easy content, which is one piece of content. So I target just this one content. Location is content location is more or less the same. I will not bother you with that. Sub-tree is like everything from one node and below that node. Children is just one level. Then we have a couple of other Easy specific, and then we have like a Symfony specific, which is like root. So these are the targets. It's representing set of URLs, which can be called. And for the conditions, so far we have only 3, but it's actually very easy to add more. In this case, we have these kind of 2 easy specific ones. Easy content type is very typical. And root parameter, that's like Symfony specific. And we could easily imagine to add here what I mentioned before, like user group or time of the day or whatever you have in the request. And this can be then used to have variations of layouts on really crazy things. Depending on geolocation, for example, you serve a different layout to the user. Maybe, let's say for mobile, if you detect it's a mobile device, you can serve a different layout. So this was a bit difficult. Of course, if you want to reorder mappings because of the priority, there is a button reorder mappings, and then you can kind of just move it around. Nothing really special. But I could show you more. I think that should be enough. Just going back to the. Where is it? No, it's not it. Here. So what are the benefits, just to conclude? We think it should make the web design development process more agile. And why is that? Because the front-end the project would start, not maybe immediately, but at a certain point very early, you should start assembling the layouts with the content you have, without any visual design. And the benefits is that you will use then the real content, which you should have in the CMS. This is very good point for pressuring the clients to prepare the content, or you import the content from existing source. So in this way, you can collaborate very early in the process. You have the content, you assemble the layouts, and then you can actually test it without any design. You can start testing with the client. Is this, good content prioritization on all these pages? The client can sense how will the site look like, but it's obvious it's not completed because it's missing the branding, it misses the visual component. So the time to market should be quicker because we can iterate faster. It should produce less waste in the meaning that, for example, a UX designer can create a prototype today and show it to the client to get the sign-off, but then the prototype is just waste because you cannot use it. Maybe you could export CSS, but then you still need to implement this CSS to the backend. Make site maintenance easier. How many of you got requests from a client saying, can you just please add this block, as information block, on these articles just in this section? Do you get these kind of requests if you do websites? In this case, an advanced editor from the client side, he could just clone the layout, add the block, and apply it to the right section, and that's it. That's the idea. They should do some things by themselves, maybe not the the common editor, but advanced editor for sure, or you will be much faster in maintaining this action. And quicker time to market, that's what I already mentioned. If I want to describe this in a shortest amount of words, I would say it's a head-to-headless. Because now we are integrated with Easy, but basically the queries could actually just be connected to a REST API or SOAP or whatever and fetch content from any system or many systems at the same time. So in the end, it gives a single cooperation point. Maybe not, this is a bit maybe too early to say, but hopefully in a year or two, it could be much more easier to say this or claim this. So what's the current status? We are adding, of course, more features like caching and user policies, translations, etc. We have already finished several projects with this, starting a few more ourselves. And this year, we already have several partners that will use this for their pilot projects. Germany, Italy, Spain, and probably a few more. And future, we will open source the core parts. The plan was to do it end of this year. It probably be a bit later or during the next year. Make it sustainable with commercial add-ons. Integrate deeper level with all Symfony-based solutions, Drupal as well, and make integrate with everything else easier. That's it. Any questions? Few.
Yeah, so you are now actually based on easy public, right?
Not based, just integrate.
Integrated with, right?
Based on Symfony.
Yeah, and I've looked at your GitHub repository, right? So, and at the end it said like the core is not there, right?
Oh, I said future, open source, the core.
Yeah, yeah. So we cannot
It's not
use
it. Not at the moment.
So we actually have to hire you guys to make the website.
No.
How we can actually do something?
If you have a pilot project, then you can talk to me, and then we will see how to collaborate. But we don't want to open source too early because we want to prove it that it works. We want to have really good documentation, really good developer experience, enough features, etc. And then once we are ready, I know that general advice for open sourcing is open source it early, but this is a too big, like it's not a trivial thing. It's quite big actually. It's, if you think about it, it's maybe a third of a CMS. Yes. So it's not something that you can just throw it out because people will not understand it. They will not figure out because it's
not the whole story.
Yeah. Open source. We have a lot of open source stuff, but it's usually smaller things that you can comprehend. This requires tutorials. It requires screencasts. It requires a lot of things that we need to prepare. Yeah.
We plan actually to go for VC funding.
Once we have kind of people wanting it and actually paying money for it, then VCs will come. So we will not push it.
Why will Drupal actually benefit from your tools if you are building a CMS for the firm that's now?
No, we are not building the CMS.
But you said
it's part of the CMS. We don't manage content here. We just place the content in various places, but we don't want to manage content here.
What about the part of the language?
Think about it as labels. You know, you have labels in Twig, right? So you would be able to write labels here like headings. It's kind of a bit gray area. What is content and what is labels? But we should support this kind of shallow content, not like articles, more like a label for an article template.
So if there's one answer to the question, like what was the main problem that you solved with this rapid prototyping and engagement?
Yeah. So it's about speed. You know, it just takes too much time. Problem is that you can use the simple tools like Webflow, Wix, Squarespace, whatever there is, WordPress, whatever. But then you just stuck with the extending capability. So this is completely Symfony. You can extend whatever you want.
But it has to have easy.
No.
No, it doesn't have.
No, we use it now because we are using Easy for 14 years. But you can run it as a Symfony standalone app. No Easy.
One developer.
We already have a proof of concept working with Silius eCommerce. Works. You are? Yeah, it will be open source in the core, or the core part, the main part, more or less what you saw now will be open source and free to use. And then we will have several commercial add-ons which make sense on bigger projects, like advanced caching, advanced user management, advanced, I don't know, something, which starts to become really important if you have a big project. And then it makes sense to pay something, right? But it will be free for the core part. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the point is that we used Symfony because it has a Symfony full stack. It has its own routing, so we just inject into it, and so it made sense. And with that, we covered several systems. Drupal, I don't know if Drupal 9 will be full stack Symfony. If it does, it will work by itself. Maybe it will not be. I don't know. So in this case, or even before Drupal 9, who knows when Drupal 9 will come. We will try to do it with Drupal 8. Probably not Drupal 7. I would say Drupal 8. Any other questions? Everything clear? Makes sense? Is it completely crazy or just a bit crazy? It's still not complete product. It lacks a bit of documentation, which is, of course.
You have to open source it, and then you will have it.
Well, we call it like layout and block management system, or you could call it a head to a headless. So, for example, you can use it with Drupal right now. Drupal has REST API, right? Yeah. So you could use this and then fetch the content via REST API. No, it's not middleware. It's a head to the headless. On a server, yeah. For example, we have actually we'll start a project in Norway really soon. With, like, they have a really old CMS in Perl, of course, why not? And they're serving like 200 websites on this. And what they will do, which is the easiest way, is just add a REST API on top of this Perl CMS. And then we will start replacing the front sites with this, make it quick to just, it's 200 websites. So we just kind of start using this on a separate server, use the REST API for the content, and then change those 200 websites maybe in next 2 years. And once all of these sites is on layouts on the front, then we just use or migrate the content to something newer and switch it back on. That would be a migration use case. It's kind of divide the problem into two parts, not have a one big project to migrate everything. Or you could have two backend systems. You could have a Easy Publish or Drupal or whatever, or contentful CMS. And on the other side, you could have a Silius or Magento or whatever. And then you literally have different queries. One query is fetching content from a CMS. The other query fetches products from from the e-commerce system. So you could have choose backend system at the same time. It's perfectly doable. Any other questions? I don't know if I'm done with the time. Probably I am. Okay, thank you.